G'day, my name is Joel Rasmussen for Southern Cross Combat, and ahead of his fight at Beatdown 8, I'm talking to Mr. Sam Marles. Sam, I nearly just called you by your last name there, Marles. Can I call you Sam? Do you prefer Sam or Samuel?
You can call me Sam. I go by Sam, but either way, my real name is Samuel, but most people call me Sam.
Just for the record.
Yeah, just for the record.
Full legal birth name, Samuel.
Samuel Marles, yeah. But I got a few nicknames, so you'll hear me getting called a bunch of different things.
What are the nicknames that you get called?
There's Marlito, there's The Mist, some people call me Sammy. There's a few random ones.
I can guess where Sammy comes from.
Quite easy.
Why Marlito and why the Mist?
I think The Mist is due to my very pale skin complexion. And Marlito is something my old coach used to call me because I used to just kind of think when I didn't know much, I kind of just would swing a little bit Mexican style. So that name has stuck.
Of course, Mexicans known for their swinging ability.
Yes, absolutely.
I'm here at Absolute Collingwood. I thank you for welcoming me into the gym. It's always a pleasure to be here and speak to you. The last time I spoke to you in an on-camera interview sense was prior to your last fight against Sam Dobb. Before we talk about this upcoming fight, I just wanted to kind of talk about that fight with you. How did you feel in that fight? How do you rate your performance?
I felt great in that fight. My performance was about what I expected. I would have liked to get the finish, but I think I put a good display of my skills. I would have liked to show a little bit more of my striking, but Sam was he was forcing the grapple, and I didn't. Once it hits the floor, if he can't get back up, then I'm not going to let him.
Prior to that fight, when I spoke to you, we talked about how you guys had sparred once a long time ago. How did he compare to the last time you had sparred with him?
I think it was a pretty similar. I think it was a pretty similar exchange to what happened in that sparring. The second time I sparred with him, we sparred twice. The second time I sparred with him, I remember it just being super gassed. So it was a little bit wilder that second time, but I think it was a pretty similar. It was about what I expected. Yeah, I mean, he had obviously improved. I had improved too. But it was interesting it was the first time I had fought someone that I'd sparred with quite like that.
Now, there obviously is a certain level of mystery when you go in because, as you said, he got better, you've gotten better. It necessarily, you don't know it's going to go the exact same way. But how was that when you're kind of getting ready for this fight and maybe have trained with the person before and you got the better of them in training? How was that for you, like, to get yourself, all right, we're in fight mode now, we have to go?
Yeah, I mean, I liked it. It gave me, I sort of knew what to expect. It had a little less questions. I mean, there's still questions that, like you were saying, I mean, you never know what's going to happen once you go on full power, once you're trying to really take each other's heads off. But I liked it. I mean, it definitely, I feel like it gave me an advantage going in. It made the approach a little bit easier. Yeah, I didn't mind in this situation. I think if the sparring had gone differently, maybe it has a different effect on the mind. But this time, it definitely, it was good to know what I was getting myself into.
This upcoming fight on Beatdown will be again in Queensland. Why have you seemed to have this sudden affinity for Queensland?
Look, I like going up to Queensland. It's good weather up there. I like traveling for my fights. Go with a team. It feels like it feels like you're on a mission together. And yeah, I like going up to Queensland. I mean, my mum's side of the family is all from Queensland. So I feel familiar with the place.
Do they come to your fights?
No, my mum can't watch. I mean, my mum is usually texting my dad or is texting one of my friends sort of updates. My mum can't watch, and it's usually not until after I give her the call, and then she gets that big sigh of relief.
How often does your dad get a chance to come to the fights?
He came to my Hex fight last year. He came to my Hex fight. I did a combat jits fight earlier this year. He also came to that. So he's come to the fights that have been in Melbourne, but hasn't made it to any of the fights outside of the state, which I'm not too mad at. He's a pretty busy guy.
Is he based out of Melbourne?
He's based in Geelong, so he lives in Geelong. My family, both my mum and my dad's family currently in Geelong, so that's sort of my, that's where I was born and raised. I obviously live in Melbourne now, live in Collingwood, a couple streets from the gym, but I grew up my whole childhood in Geelong.
As an interviewer, I'm not trying to like dox you and get the home address out. I just wasn't sure if he was here or if he was living in Canberra.
No, well, he has a he does stay. He actually stays in. Or maybe I shouldn't say that, but yeah, he does stay up there.
FIFO.
Yeah, for parts of the year.
Anyway, back to you and back to the fight career. I was going to bring up the combat jits match a little bit later, but since you brought it up, we'll talk about it now. How was the combat jits match?
It was very, very enjoyable. I always wanted to slap someone, and I got my chance to do it. Took it on short notice, which, given the just kind of popped up, probably like maybe on the Wednesday. I was hearing rumors that someone had pulled out. I sort of put my name up. Didn't think anything would come of it, and then before you know it, I'm getting offered the opportunity, and it was almost too good to turn down. So I enjoyed the experience. It was a really well-run show as well at Fusion, and I would definitely, if the timing works, I'd definitely give that another go.
Aside from like the literal obvious rule differences, how does a combat jiu-jitsu match differ to an MMA fight?
I mean, obviously you don't have the stand-up aspect of it, so setting up your grappling exchanges is a little trickier. Like in MMA, the striking allows the takedown to come much easier because you can get people preoccupied with what's happening upstairs, which you can't do in the combat realm. But honestly, once it hits the floor, it's very, very similar. I mean, you don't have the elbows. The open palm is a little tricky, but in terms of the positions where you're in danger, very similar to an MMA fight. So it's actually great experience. Yeah.
So you kind of touched on it just there at the end, but it is like, do you feel doing a combat jiu-jitsu match has made you a better MMA fighter?
Absolutely. I think the skill, I mean, they're very transferable skills. So I think it's experience that counts going into this next MMA fight. But it's also, every fight's different. So I don't try not to take too much from it. But I'm glad I did it. I'm glad I put that experience in the bank, and I'll definitely do it again.
Talking about this upcoming MMA fight, you're fighting Max Kelly. What are your thoughts on Max Kelly as an opponent?
I think an interesting opponent. I think me and Max is an interesting fight. He's a well-rounded guy. He actually does a lot of, from what I've seen, he does a lot of things. He has a similar game to myself. I mean, he's a bit of a boxing heavy. Uses his kicks. He uses his teeps. Has a nice calf kick, and he seems to have well-drilled grappling. I mean, he comes from a good camp at Base Training Center with Damo, so he's well-drilled. He's got good stand. He's good in all areas, yeah. So I think it's an interesting fight.
We talked about that experience and you yourself gathering more of that experience. Max Kelly's a man with 4 fights professionally at MMA. You're a man with 2 fights professionally at MMA. I know, like, when we're in the world of it, when we're in the thick of it, we think that's not a lot. But in reality, it's 4 professional fist fights. Like, that is very intense. How do you approach kind of that when you're fighting a guy who has a lot more experience?
I mean, I've been training with guys who have more experience than me my whole career. I fought as an amateur. I fought against guys with much more experience than me. Yeah, I don't think it's going to play too much of a factor. I mean, Sam Dobbert had 5 fights, so I think it just shows my willingness to step up and take on challenges. And I think as a pro so far, I'm taking the correct steps. I'm moving up the ladder. I'm showing where my level's at, and I think Max Kelly is another opportunity for me to prove that I am one of the best in the country, and I plan to make a statement this fight.
What statement do you plan on making?
I plan to just show everyone that I'm the real deal, and I'm gonna show a fuller. Hopefully I'll get the opportunity to show my full skill set, depending on how he fights. I mean, my plan is always to take the path of least resistance. So we'll see what he has to offer. But I think stylistically, he's the right matchup for me to show what I'm about.
How did this fight kind of come to be? Did they approach you with the fight? Did you say, hey, I'd love to fight on Beatdown? Like, how did this literally come to be?
Well, I've been wanting to fight on Beatdown because I think what Damo's doing is a fantastic job. I mean, the production on Beatdown is sensational. The venue looks fantastic. Damo is a former fighter, so he really knows how to treat his athletes. So I've been wanting to fight on Beatdown. I went up to Townsville for Joey's fight, and Max was meant to fight D up there. So, and obviously D didn't make weight, and pretty much as soon as D missed weight, I messaged Damo being like, I want that fight. Like, if I'll take that fight on the next show, and I guarantee you I'll be there on weight. And then I actually spoke to Max later that day, but we ended up talking about just the situation with D, and I didn't mention to him that I had said that to Damo. And then the following night, I pulled him aside and I said, just out of respect, I don't want you to think I'm going behind your back, being one way to your face. And I sort of asked him, I said, I think you and I would be a great fight. I think where we're at in our careers, it makes sense. We should do this.
You say there where you're at in your career. The last time I spoke to you, we kind of talked about your career and what your kind of goals were. You've talked about it in other interviews where there isn't exactly, at least when I spoke to you last, there wasn't exactly like a written underlined goal. It wasn't this title. It wasn't this many fights. It was just kind of be the best version of yourself that you can be. I was wondering, as the career continues, has that goal shifted at all? Do you have something that's a little bit more like, I want this, and I want this?
Of course, I mean, my goal, like I was saying, my goal is to be the best version of myself in this sport. I mean, I just love the sport. I love growing as a martial artist. I love learning new skills. But of course, the more you start to win, the more you start to see these smaller goals along the way, which seem achievable. But ultimately, my goal as a fighter is to have high-profile fights against some of the best guys in the world, and to prove to myself and to prove to my team that I belong here.
The reason I bring that up is I feel like, especially in local Australian MMA, we're getting to this era where there's a lot of guys who are younger guys earlier on in their career getting those high-profile fights that you kind of talked about. When you look at someone like a Johnny McAuliffe, he got that title fight earlier on in his career. He wasn't the most experienced guy. As you can grow and continue to win, I'm not asking you this in a way that any disrespect to Max Kelly. I'm not asking you this in terms of looking through the guy, but just in general, as you get those wins and you begin to build that, are those possibilities of, all right, I might be getting to the realm where I can fight for a title or fight for those really kind of upper card places. Is that beginning to be considered?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I think my performances are speaking for themselves. I mean, Sam Dobb was a highly touted guy, and no disrespect to him, but that was a dominant performance. Really wasn't in trouble at any point throughout that fight, except for maybe the first exchange where he took me down. So I think I'm proving myself. I think the scene, the way that young guys are getting shots early, it is showing that how you fight, how you look, who you beat matters, and record is becoming a little less important, as I think it should, because records can be very misleading at times. I mean, there's guys with great records who I think are easy fights. There's guys with not so good records who I think are tough fights. So the record doesn't necessarily tell the story. It's one small indication. And yeah, I think if I beat Max Kelly convincingly, then moving forward, I think I'm starting to be in that conversation for a title shot. I mean, I'm hearing Damo might be putting titles up in Beatdown, and I think at welterweight, Jack James probably deserves that shot. And I think if I can go through Max Kelly the way I expect to, I think that's a fight that makes a lot of sense.
I'm sure that'd be a very exciting fight. I'm sure everyone out there would love to see that. We're sitting here at Absolute MMA in Collingwood. I don't know if the camera can see you're wearing Fighters Express tracksuit. And yesterday, I saw on your Instagram story you were at a different gym as well.
Yeah, well, yesterday I was with Absolute at Rama One, where they were doing an interclub, and we had a bunch of our young guys fighting there. I am wearing the Fighters Express trackies at the moment. I've done a lot of work with Peter Hatton, who's one of the coaches down there. Pete has been phenomenal for me in terms of my striking. So I go and see Pete a couple times a week. Haven't really ever trained in like a class setting at Fighters Express. I've only really gone there to see Pete. But yeah, the trackies are nice and warm. But I am definitely absolute through and through.
It was a very clunky transition for me. The only reason I brought that up was I wanted to ask about how was it yesterday, what was going on. So you weren't training somewhere, you guys were doing an interclub. How was that?
It was great. Yeah, we had a bunch of our young guys. In fact, they performed really, really well. Had one of my, a guy that I hold pads for a lot, Ben, who's a young guy in the game, who's I think is going to be really good. So it was great for them to get some experience. I think we had maybe 5 people. I think they all won. I think we all had wins, and Ben had a draw. So it was fantastic. I mean, like there's so many interclubs now. The scene has changed a lot over the last few years, and there's so many interclubs. There's so many new ways to get experience in this sport, and it's great to see grassroots MMA, or really just grassroots combat, because it was a Muay Thai event, growing the way that it is.
That was going to be my follow-up. I was going to ask what sport it was. Were you there just to cheer people on? Were you in the corner?
I was in the corner for a couple of the guys. Yeah, I was there to coach and there to support the other guys.
How do you find being in the corner? Do you like it? Like, what are your thoughts on being in the corner?
That's a good question. I like being in the corner. I'm fairly new myself. Like sometimes I feel like I don't have the experience to be in the corner in the capacity that, say, a Simon is, or a Raja or Joe. I mean, Joe's fantastic in the corner. So usually when I'm in the corner, I'm happy taking a back seat. And I'm usually in the corner for people that I hold pads for and coach in a different capacity. And then in the corner, I'm maybe being more like a emotional support. If I see anything, I can mention it to Simon. But at the moment, it still makes me nervous. I'm nervous to say the wrong thing. I'm aware that I have a bias to how I see the sports. I don't want my bias to impact how they're fighting too much. So at the moment, I'm still finding my way in the corner. I think later in my post-career, I'll probably have more confidence to speak my mind. But at the moment, I'm happy taking a back seat. I'm happy learning from Simon, from Joe, from Raja, how they conduct themselves in the corner, and figuring out how to be a little bit different for each individual.
A little bit of a switch gears here, but the last time I spoke to you, we talked about golf. I've noticed, I feel like the golf has kind of dropped off a little bit at Absolute. It's cold. It is in winter. You talked about that earlier. Are you still playing golf?
Still playing a little bit of golf. I play from time to time. I try not to play too close to the fight, just because even though it is a leisurely sport and you're unlikely to get an injury, there is definitely, especially my body. I've played so much golf over the years, and I have some injuries or some tightness that will develop if I play too much. So when a fight comes up, I take a step back a little bit, but I'm still playing in between camps. I still enjoy it, and it's become something that I get to do, get my mind off it, and I still find it to be, I think it's still good for my skills. It's still good for my hand-eye coordination, keeps me competitive, keeps my mind active. So I'm enjoying the golf. I'm glad that I have gotten back into it. The boys are still playing a little bit. I think once summer hits, we'll all get back in the rhythm. But it is freezing down here, so it's freezing. It's wet. It's not great golf conditions at the moment.
Not at all. You mentioned there that it's something that you do that can help you kind of switch off and take your mind off things. That being said, I don't know how many people know this about you. If I'm not mistaken, prior to your career as an MMA fighter, you were looking at doing the pro golf thing. How is that? Because I'm assuming you approached that sport with the professional mindset, and now to kind of be back at it, but you're you're playing with your friends. You're not doing the tournament thing necessarily. How is that? Do you get like competitive on the golf course?
It's changed in a big way for me. Like when I was pursuing professional golf, and I was playing every single day and obsessed, similar to how I am now. And I was young at that time. I wasn't as emotionally equipped. I didn't have this sort of mental skills that I have now. I was much more, I was angry sometimes on the golf course. I'd get in my head, and you almost at times you stop enjoying it. And when I started losing the passion, that initial stage of of where you start to you're not as good as your previous form would burn a little bit. But now coming back, it's completely changed. Now I just go out there, have fun, no stress. In fact, to be honest, I'm playing some of my best golf now, probably just because all the mental skills that I've learnt doing this have become very transferable. I mean, I had never meditated once as a golfer. Now it's a regular part of my routine, and I see how valuable it is, especially in a sport like golf. I wish I had known that skill at that age.
What do you do to meditate?
I use the Waking Up app, Sam Harris. I try to do 10 minutes a day. Sometimes I do it a couple times a day. I do a lot of floats. I really like the float tank. I go down to Beyond Rest in Collingwood. They're fantastic. So that's something and as the fight gets closer, I'll increase that exercise to about maybe 2 or 3 a week. Sometimes I'll do it right before sparring. And I just get in there, visualize, spend parts of it trying my best to meditate, trying my best to be present. And I feel like since I've done it, really translates to my performance, especially under pressure.
He is now left the room, so I now will ask about him. Dylan Lahari was just in here. He's kind of returning to the sport and making his professional debut. Now that he's out of the room, I will ask you. What are your thoughts on Dylan? How has he been in the training room?
Man, Dylan is a weapon. This is one of the great comebacks in combat sports. Forget about Conor McGregor. This is the one we should all be talking about. The 2-time demolition champion. I think he's going to walk out there with both belts. And what I'd love to see most is that he goes in there, wins, and then he retires again, and he leaves the sport on top with his professional win. But no, jokes aside, Dylan being in the room, the guy didn't train for he did train, but he was not training as he would normally for 6 months there, and he comes back and it's as if he's improved, as if he was in the room the whole time. So he's an extremely talented guy, an extremely talented grappler, and I think if he were, depends what he wants, but I think if he continued in the sport, he'll have massive success, and you'll see him at the highest level.
I asked you after he left, hoping to get the real answer, but of course you give me the double champs coming back answer, which I do appreciate. No, but I do thank you for the insight. Finally, from me, not to ask about someone else yet again. You've made your opinions known on Jacob Lepage. Anyone who is a fan of the Absolute podcast will hear that. A, just in general, your thoughts on him, and also B, how do you kind of look at opponents and look to pick those fights?
I mean, I personally don't think Jacob Lepage is any good. I would love to fight Jacob Lepage. I know that fight's not going to happen. He's not going to fight me. Yeah, it's as simple as that. I think he had the opportunity to fight me. He missed the opportunity, which was smart by him. So yeah, simple. I don't think Jacob Lepage really wants to test himself the way that other guys in this sport do. So, and if he ever does, he's welcome. I'm down to go with him anytime. But I'm trying to stay active. I'm trying to get fights, and I'm moving past where Jacob Lepage is at.
I know we just talked about Jacob Lepage, but the man in front of you is Max Kelly. That fight happens the end of this week. We're currently in Melbourne. When do you head up?
Head up on Thursday, get there Thursday night, cut weight Friday. We got the 1 p.m. weigh-in, which is fantastic. That's another reason I like going up to Queensland. They got the early weigh-ins, which makes a massive difference having 36 hours. So, yeah, go up there Thursday, get the job done Saturday night, come back, and then back to life as normal, as usual.
Sam, I thank you very much for the time. I greatly appreciate you talking to me today. Safe travels up there and best of luck in the fight. Thank you very much, my friend.
Thanks for having me, Joel. Really appreciate it. And, I appreciate you putting us fighters out there, especially at this stage in our career. So thank you.
Of course.